back, guys.
Man, it's
Did
been
you
a
start
while.
this long break?
It was a longer break than expected.
I don't know what you guys been up to, but
Me too. We're in here.
yeah.
Just
Yeah,
because we're not recording a
this
podcast
isn't the only place I see you.
doesn't mean that our
Anyway.
interactions have ended.
The podcast is starting back up, guys.
Yes.
Are you ready
Due to
for
popular demand.
No, nobody
No.
actually wanted to.
I asked. I kept asking, can we do the podcast? I'm having fun. I miss it. People are talking to me.
We printed up like 5,000 stickers, and now we have like 4,900 and.
No, we gave out a lot of stickers. They
No, we
just didn't have
came
a
out.
podcast to listen to.
Still, nobody's going to listen to it still. But,
But what a way to be back. I'm excited.
yes, this is going to be fun. Before we talk about our guests, we probably should catch up
Zebra
a little
cakes? Is that what you're going to bring up?
bit. Zebra cakes? No. We've already talked about zebra cakes. That's old news. What's new with you, Jeremy? Any new kids?
I've got the same amount of kids. They're getting older.
As yesterday?
Keep growing up. I keep telling them stop it, and they won't. They say they have to keep growing.
See, I'm at
And
the
so they
opposite
quit eating.
end of that spectrum. I'm like, please hurry up and grow up so you will move out of the house.
I've kinda had that-
please be gone.
I've kind of had that sentiment from day one.
I don't know. I
I was
like 'em when
asking
they're little.
my firstborn, I was like, so when are you leaving?
You need help moving that furniture?
Yeah, he couldn't walk, but I still wanted him to leave. Anyway, nothing new. No new news. Gone. You got a new house.
I did moved into a new
I
place.
got a new camper.
Jason got a new camper, which is actually
I'm
going
thinking
to
about
become his
making
new
it my
house.
house. I'm thinking about it. But I might do it. You never know.
I don't doubt it. I can see Jason. Jason got himself a new camper, and I know I was that way. When I got a camper, I was like, pretty much every weekend we were gone. And then I'm at the space right now where, yes, we moved in a new house, so that pretty much wiped out my summer. You're still trying to unbox things, and I'm here to tell you guys, I have realized in moving that every single one of us, I know it can't be just me, but every one of us is holding on to about 80% more things than we should have.
And that's part of the reason why I'm thinking about getting rid of my house. I think I'm downsizing. I've had enough. I basically got 3 small areas in my house that I use regularly. The rest of it's just filler. And it's places for kids
The
to
only
put
thing people need
toys,
in their house is more guitars, mandolins, and banjos. You guys never should stop buying those, but
true.
everything else,
a microwave, and a TV,
you can have those too.
TV.
and a bed. Anyway, so we'll see. We'll see as this progresses, the season progresses. We'll see if I'm still willing to give up my home. And John is
If he's going to unbox things.
whether or not he's ready to move.
Here's
into
what
his
I
house.
think was the weirdest part about this. I packed things into boxes that I'm like, no, I can't get rid of this. We're going to need this in a short amount of time. And they have not unboxed yet. And I'm pretty sure I won't. That
moved-
was after throwing
I
away
moved in
so
2020
much
into my
stuff.
house, and there's still half of the garage that
Yeah.
is things that were in boxes from
And
the move.
I've honestly finally got my wife to come around, and there are things that are just going. Like value, if there's value to it, used to be, that has some value. We can sell that or we can do something with it. Nope. If it hasn't been touched, it's going.
Haven't you?
gone.
Now, there's a line that I hear too much, and I'm kind of getting tired of. I can't just throw that out. I could sell that on Marketplace, or I
But
could sell,
you never
and you
will.
never ever do. Like, she would load stuff. My wife will take stuff and will load it into the back of her van. She's like, I'm going to take that and go donate it or do something with it or blah, blah. It's there 4 months later.
All right, this is why we're back with the podcast.
It's therapy, Jeremy. Shut up.
I was about to
Shut
say,
up,
this
Jeremy.
This is your therapy session, and you're going to unload
Why-
6
why-
months worth
why
of
don't-
stress.
Why don't you just shut up? All right.
We're
Viewers
going to
don't
get
wanna
back
hear
to
you bickering.
That is going to be Jason's new sticker. Is actually going to be
Jeremy?
Jeremy.
Jeremy,
John.
shut up. All right.
My kids aren't allowed to say that, by the way.
Well, I'm sorry.
Now
Jeremy,
they can't listen to this
stop
podcast
speaking
from your mouth.
from your mouth while I'm talking because I don't want to hear you.
Welcome
much
back
nicer.
to the podcast, folks. We got a special guest. Jim Pankey is going
Jim
to be
Panky.
our
I love that
guest of
transition. By the
honor.
way. That was a fine.
Jeremy,
I
yeah,
had to
he
get
was
us
a
out of
seg-
that tank.
It's called a
thing.
Segway, also some sort of odd scooter, one-wheeled scooter
It
thing.
has 2 wheels, but it just stands upright.
All right.
You can buy a Segway
One
scooter.
axle.
No.
My kid actually, going back to kids, my kid actually has a Segway bicycle.
What?
It's pretty good. It's
I
not
guess
powered.
It's just called a bicycle.
It's not powered. It's just like a regular. It's just like a nice.
Jim
bicycle.
Pankey, guys, is our guest. He is renowned for his YouTube and TikTok content.
Famous
Also has a
TikToker and
Segway.
YouTuber, Banjo extraordinaire.
Yeah, and
I first came across Jim Pankey in my Bluegrass TikTok research. Came across, he's doing live streams and lots of content and
I'm gonna
fun
tell a
stuff.
fun story here.
Fun story.
He was our first TikToker in the wild. We were at the Carter Vintage in Nashville, Tennessee. Me and Jason were out there.
Yep.
I think it was for Spigma or something. We were just
Sigma. Yep.
we were just
2
going there
3
to
years
visit
ago.
the shop, and Jay goes, "I think that's Jim Pankey over there. We should go say hi."
Yeah.
And so we did.
We got,
went
we
up
got
and-
our picky. We got our picky with him.
Yep, we did. I took a photo. Is what that
Very
means.
strange. I don't know what that means.
We got our Panky Picky with him.
We got our Panky.
We went up to him and said, "I
Picky
love your
something.
TikTok channel. It's nice to meet you." Our first time approaching a TikToker.
Jason
He
has
said, "Who are
officially
you?" and
said
go away.
2 things in that little section there that nobody knows what he said. He said Spigma and Picky. Neither one of those are real things.
Pinky Picky.
Pick it, whatever. Anyway, yes, we got to meet him there. We started talking, and we've kept the conversation up, trying to do some content together. And Jim's actually going to come visit us, so there'll be more content. Check out our YouTube channel; it'll be there. Check out his YouTube channel; it'll be there.
Yeah.
Why not? Anyway, very very fun guy to deal with. Honestly, has a cool outlook on life. Kind of
Tie-dye and
alternative,
overalls. I mean, that tells
tie-dye.
you all you need to know.
And he's laid back. He just like, hey, I'm gonna play banjo. I'm gonna be me. And that's something to look forward to. I can't be me. Sorry.
Jason's putting on an act right now.
Yeah, I've gotta
Never
be me.
know the real Jason.
Yeah, you'll never know me. Anyway, let's talk to Jim
Let's say
Pankey.
hi,
Why don't
Joe.
we, Jeremy?
Take me away, 'cause I can be the way. Let somebody while letting go and I can have my way.
Jim, it is great to have you on the podcast today. This is the Acoustic Shoppe Knows People, and we are going to know you here today.
That's kind of scary. This
I feel like I know him because I've tuned into a lot of his live streams on TikTok, and me and Jim have talked on the live streams.
Yeah,
and,
from time to time.
interacted. So,
Did you have anything to actually talk about? Because you're not a banjo guy.
well, that's the good thing about Jim is he could just talk about things in life in general. The channel is more about life advice than it is about banjo.
it's definitely not about banjo. The whole TikTok live stream for me is the uncurated version of me. It's just me. It's not the hey y'all, Jim Pankey here. It's not that guy. That guy gets in trouble on TikTok. So.
I think that's why people like to tune in. I'll do that too myself. I'll find myself watching some guy pack packages and just it's kind of like a window into people's unfiltered
Right
life.
now, I just got a window into your life that you sit there and watch somebody.
It does seem odd. It's more like candy. Like these guys they're a candy factory and they pack orders and you watch them and they talk to people while they're doing it. I don't know. There's something about that you get to be like a fly on the wall. And Jim does a great job of that. A lot of times he's just sitting on his bed with a banjo in his hand. And he'll be playing and reading comments and answering people's questions.
Yeah, it's a way for me to kind of unwind and I count it as bonus practice time because I'm just sitting, usually just noodling, but a lot of times I'll come up with ideas or discover things that it's like, oh shoot, I need to be working on this. This is not good, and so it gives me chance. So it while it is practice time, it's also just decompress time and me just hanging out with a small community of folks that are regular, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I can see
Well,
that.
this is where I come clean. This is a deep, dark secret. I get really nervous when I stumble upon a live stream, even if I know Jim and I watch him sometimes. I feel really awkward, and I don't want him to call me out. I want to sit at the back of the room. I get
an
nervous,
anonymous thing
so
where it
I'll
doesn't
watch
show.
for a few seconds, and I'll run before he notices.
But see, that's one of the great things about doing the lives is I'll see folks when they come. I get little notifications when folks come in, and sometimes I'll call them out, and sometimes I just let them do their drive-bys. So yeah, you're always welcome to do a drive-by.
Jason's going to need an anonymous account that he can just sit there
stop by.
and tune in.
You don't know me. It's gonna be. You see the account
his
come up and says,
title.
"You don't know me, Jim."
Yeah, that's fine.
Not Jason Chapman.
Yeah, it's really not Jason.
So
it is fun.
is there a crew of people that are, you said you got your regulars and we see that, when we do our stuff here at the shop, but isn't it more interesting some of the people that show up that you would never expect or get into, especially for you, because it is a banjo culture, to find these new people that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it really is. And the number of the I guess the enabler part of me, the number of people that have stumbled across my live stream and then they'll come back. Once you interact with something, TikTok's going to give it to you again. And then they'll come back, and then the next thing you know, they've bought a banjo. And it's like,
and we hate you for that.
I know, it's just like I'm out here. Not only am I teaching the world banjo, I'm enabling it as well. It's like, but it's fun to see folks, come around and just start out by hanging out and asking questions, and they're like, "Hey, I play guitar. Can I play banjo?" And it's like, "Yeah, probably." But you're going to have a banjo to find out. And, and then
and that's where the affiliate link comes in.
That's
right?
very handy.
Just kidding.
That's something I've seen on there. Also, a lot of people they'll say, "What is that thing? What is that instrument?" Or the opposite of, "My grandpa used to own one of those. I love this." Seeing that thing. So you kind of get the polar opposites. People that don't even know what a banjo looks like, and they're asking you what that weird guitar is that you're playing.
Yeah.
Or the people that say, "My grandpa had one of those. I forgot all about it until stumbling across this."
Why is that string in the middle of the neck? All and
they ran out of wire.
Yeah, it's just like it wasn't well thought out, but it was. But yeah, you get a broad spectrum. Just about every time I do a live stream, people will ask, "What instrument is that?" And a lot of times, my brain, I'm going, "Well, it's a recording king," and they're like, "No, what is the instrument in itself?" "Oh, it's a banjo." And so, which is, for me growing up where I did, we all knew what a banjo was, but obviously not everybody knows that, and I'm cool with that, and just spread the word a little bit.
So if a drum and a guitar fell in love,
this is kind of what you wind up with. Yeah, pretty much. It's a fun thing, and introducing folks to it that may not have been introduced to it or were aware of it but never heard anybody just sit and play it outside of the context of some country music song or something they heard on television, which is
Well, I think this is a story of how I kind of fell upon you. TikTok is the reason I know of you, and then it brings us down that big rabbit hole of looking what you've done elsewhere. You have a really strong YouTube channel and mostly education side of that stuff.
Yeah.
Which is a cool thing. Another extension of what you're doing, which is awesome. But really, I want to use this podcast to kind of get to know Jim.
Jim before
the
YouTube
real
and TikTok.
Jim.
Well, it's an open book, man. I have no secrets.
Let's
go
us
back
in
to
the
your
Wayback
childhood.
Machine.
Yeah. So, no, I guess the first question would be, why banjo?
I ask people that.
become?
I ask people that all the time. Like if they'll come and take a class, I teach at John C. Campbell Folk School, and from a couple of times a year, and that's always first question to everybody in my beginning banjo classes is, well, of all things, why banjo? And for me, that's a fair question, and I have no idea. I do remember. Well, I don't remember this, but there are old 8mm home movie clips of me imitating Grandpa Jones, and I'd have probably been 2 years old. And I didn't have a banjo at that point. I had a skillet, which, not a lot
Looks
different.
like it.
Not a lot different. And, I had my little boots,
Same tone.
and I could, so I was always.
By the way, get ready for the new Jim Pankey model, the skillet banjo.
That's right, the skillet.
Brought to you by Lodge.
That's right. I could, I could probably call Bob Kellerman and see what we could do there. He's not far from here. We could, but yeah. So I always, anything that was banjo related, I just loved as a kid. I just for whatever reason was just drawn to it. I would hear, back then you would hear banjo on television, TV commercial, or wherever, and my parents talk about me, hearing banjo music or whatever and just making a beeline to the television just to see what it was. So I just was always fascinated with it, but I didn't start out on it. I started out on mandolin because it did not seem intimidating. And but I went mandolin, guitar, banjo. Mom had an old banjo at home, and which was almost barely playable, but it was, you could tune it up and you could play some rolls. So I started figuring out banjo pretty quick. I mean, I might have been playing mandolin for about 3 months before I got to banjo. And so kind of learned it all at the same time. But yeah, why banjo? No idea. It just because,
It just felt good.
Interesting. And when I started playing it, when I started slowly figuring it out, it kind of made sense, which unlike the mandolin to me, mandolin is so very, and guitar, they're so very linear. Everything's in a straight line. Everything's nice and neat. Banjo's not. Much like my brain.
That makes more sense to you.
And it's very amorphous.
Is that supposed to be normal?
It's very amorphous, It's just like, oh yeah. So I don't know.
So you mentioned that your mom had a banjo in the house. Obviously, you had access to mandolin. Were your parents musicians as well? Was there music in the household?
Dad played guitar and mandolin a little bit, but he didn't start. I was probably 3 years old before Dad started playing guitar. But his family was somewhat musical in the sense that, a couple played piano, sisters, and they all sang. So, music was in that family, but mostly a singing tradition. And then Dad started playing the guitar when I was little. And so so I had access to music and access to, hearing it played. And then, of course, Dad had all the old country music records and Flat and Scruggs and Stanley Brothers, stuff like that. But I wouldn't say that I came from, directly a musical family. Dad, he'd strum rhythm guitar and sing Merle Haggard songs, and, but but yeah, I did have access to it. Mom doesn't play anything. Just the banjo belonged to her family, and some of the folks in her family, I think, played, but they were all passed on before I ever had a chance to really get to know them.
So what made it go from just this, a kid that was interested in these instruments and the banjo made sense, you listened to a bunch of albums, to actually deciding, hey, this is something I'm more than just mildly interested in. This is something I really want to become proficient at?
High school. So 10th grade, we had moved to a new county, and 10th grade, I'm still riding the school bus, and get on the school bus. And back then, if a school bus would hold 60 kids, they put 70 on it, So somebody's standing up, and so I'm on the bus, and there's this kid, just looked intimidating to me, and new kid in school, high school, with all of the stuff going on, adolescence and all of that. And so there's this kid, but he's in the seat by himself, and I was like, is this seat taken? And he just gives me the sternest look. And it's like, have you had your shots? And it's like, well, yeah, I have. As a matter of fact, he says, well, I guess you can sit down. So we start talking. And for all of his bluster, he turned out to be a pretty nice guy. And I found out that he played guitar. I played, and we were talking, music came up, and I told him I played banjo. And he says, you know what we ought to do? He says, you need to join the FFA, Future Farmers of America, and we'll have a string band. And at that high school, the FFA string band had been a tradition since probably the 30s or early 40s. I mean, it had been a thing since the very beginning. So the high school I went to was built 1934 through WPA money or whatever, through, the New Deal. And the agricultural teacher at the school was G.I. Maddox, and G.I. played mandolin. And so other boys that played music, he had a string band. So we had a string band in the high school, and we played straight up bluegrass music. So I played banjo. The kid I met on the bus, Mark, who I still see from time to time and play music with from time to time, he played guitar and played fiddle some, and then a couple of other boys. I mean, so we had, a bass player, mandolin player, guitar, banjo, fiddle. I mean, we had everything that we needed for a little bluegrass band. And
what town was this in?
This is Chatsworth, Georgia. It's where I am now. And we sang two of the boys, Bobby and Porky, we called him, it was Kelvin. They were involved in drama and chorus, so they sang and understood harmonies, and so we learned to sing harmony parts, and and just had a pretty good little bluegrass band. I have maybe a couple of cassette tapes of us, just playing. And while it's not great, it's pretty good for a bunch of 15-year-old boys, that's just now figuring it out, So
That's awesome.
But so that was really the hook, playing with other people. And then we got to travel a little bit. We went out to Kansas City for the FFA National Convention and performed for that, and just played around. I mean, we would play for like all the local civic clubs, the Kiwanis Club, Lions Club. We would play for those clubs, and we would do their events in return for pay, but the pay was usually in the form of livestock for our club.
Oh, that's nice.
Like the first thing I ever got paid was a pig. That was my
With the price of bacon these days,
for sure, yeah. But that would have been one of the first things I ever got actually paid for playing was a pig, and which it's like, oh, you mean I can play banjo and people will give me things of value, like I'm in. So at that point, it's like, yeah, let's see what we can do. And so I played all through high school. And once I got to college, I went to the University of Georgia, which had a pretty good bluegrass scene at that time. And so I met other folks down there, and, let's see, a couple of guys that I met when I was at Georgia, David Blackman, who wound up playing for Jerry Reed, fiddle player, and just a bunch of guys. And so we played music a lot. As a matter of fact, one of my college friends, Andy Carlson, he's string professor at Denison University. And so there was a good scene while I was in college. So that kept me interested. And then I wound up teaching agriculture back at the school here in town. And we carried on the tradition of the string band there as well. So, it was, cool. So it kind of came full circle, but it was, so just for me, the thing that really sold it to me was just the immediate ability to play with other people. I remember the first Fiddlers Convention I went to. I might have been playing maybe 8 or 9 months, and I went to Fiddlers Convention, and that was the first time I ever jammed with strangers, people I'd never played with before, and just went, hung out, and played music. And so that was very that was a big hook. So between, having a little band and be able to go to a festival or Fiddlers Convention and hang out with folks and play music, oh yes, that was, why wouldn't I continue to do this? So,
I think, jamming, like you just said, with other people that you haven't played with before, that is really the hook. Like, well, me and John have had a lot of students, and a lot of them are like, I never want to play with anybody. I just want to be able to sit in my room and play by myself. We encourage them.
Missing your point.
We encourage them to get out with other people, and they get hooked when they do that. They're nervous as all whatever, because they just think, everybody's going to be judging me. They're going to think I'm making mistakes. But once they realize everyone else is very friendly, they're all kind of in this community together. And then you have that play back and forth, not only musically, like following chord changes and stuff like that, but in between songs, building these relationships. That's when music takes on a whole new meaning and becomes much more addictive, I think.
Oh yeah, and you brought up the point, like in the bluegrass community, especially, as well as the bluegrass and old time community are very inviting, very accepting. And I remember going to that jam. There's pictures of me at this jam, and there's a couple of guys, Herb Fields, local mandolin guitar player, and Jim Etheridge, another local guitar guy. And you see them, and then you can see me off in the distance, just like way outside. I figured out, let's just stand back here and not mess anything up. And then, but pretty soon, and I think it was Jim Etheridge. He looks up at me and says, "Hey, you come over here closer so we can hear you." And it's like, I don't know if y'all want to hear me or not. They said it'd be fine, and it was totally fine. So that really probably my first actual jam session would have been there, and which gave me courage to I can just go jam with anybody at that point.
I think that's a good point for any listeners out there that may be thinking about going to a jam session. Realize that every one of us, I know the first time I was in a jam session and I was like nervous somebody was going to call on me to play a solo or something. And every time it would come around to me, I'd just get nervous. Like I'd almost shake that they were going to call on me. And finally they did it. And I tried to solo, messed it up pretty bad, but everybody was very encouraging. So if you're going to go to a jam session, you will probably be nervous, but the people are going to be inviting, and just take that leap. Know that Jim Pankey was the same way. He stood in the back and waited till somebody encouraged him to get up front.
And if they're not inviting you, you should leave.
Go to a different jam.
Find a different jam.
That's a lesson I learned.
Yeah, I mean, and you do encounter that, and a lot of times, even still, like festivals and such, if you don't get invited into that little jam, those folks are probably practicing or it's something else, or they're just jamming with the folks that they always jam with. But a lot of places, it'll be a very open situation. Come on, bring it, get it out. A lot of times I remember walking with my case and people say, "Get that out. Come over here and get that out and play with us." And it's like, well, okay, you don't know what you're asking for, but sure, but that's playing with other people was a huge thing for me, and it's also kind of one of the things that keeps me coming back. I don't.
So I got a question: Does the string band still exist?
I do.
So is that tradition still going?
It does not, as far as I know. Maybe some schools still have it, but I don't. That did not exist at the school. I think maybe the last one would have been in the 80s that I was kind of in charge of. That
was one of the early Bluegrass programs then that was going, because there are some elementary and middle schools and high schools that have been running Bluegrass bands throughout the school, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah,
I was hoping you were going to say, of course, it's still rolling.
Yeah, it's still
it wasn't in an official role, but we do have a family band here that took lessons from me and John, and they were part of the ag group as well, and their instructor was also a mandolin player, and so he had them get together, and they went to that Kansas City National FFA convention, and they did like a big performance up there. So it was an unofficial version of that, I think. But
the state of Georgia, their FFA program, we actually had contests. We had, you had a local contest, district, and state, and we actually competed in all of those events. I think we got maybe first or second place at the state, but I mean, the competition was actually pretty good.
Imagine.
It wasn't just, I think it still is in existence. And again, if you're listening out there, and let us know, I think there still is a talent contest that is being done. I know Emily has done it too as well, and performed for it. So I do believe that is still a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
So how did this lead to, what was next? Did you end up joining any national touring bands and hitting the road with the banjo?
I played with a lot of regional groups, things here locally. Played with some group, just things around. Like most people, I fell into the trap of the day job, and it's like, well, what day job can I have where I can play music on the weekends? And so I did that, and then I wound up playing with a group I played with a Southern Gospel group that traveled for about 6 months. I traveled with them for about 6 months before I didn't want to do that anymore. And then I started playing with a local group out of Dalton, Georgia called Shady Hollow. And they were playing a lot of stuff in Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma. They did a bunch of stuff out that way. And I traveled with them for several years doing that on their ancient bus, which was more of a museum than anything. It was a rolling disaster for the most part, but it looked like bluegrass for sure.
That was the case with almost every bluegrass band that was touring in the 70s, 80s, 90s.
Up until Oh Brother. Everybody had a crummy bus until Oh Brother came out, and then.
Yeah, and you had to have somebody on the bus that was a diesel mechanic. You know, it's like,
exactly.
Oh, you want to play bass with us? What's your diesel mechanic skills like?
And being a promoter had to be tough because it's almost a gamble. Like, are they going to make it to the show or not?
And I remember when people would talk about their buses, it was always, this was an old retired Greyhound that had hit 2 million miles.
Right.
And you're just sitting here like, okay, that's the one I want.
The reason they retired it.
we were.
What was that fun
going,
moment when we saw these? You'd always go to these festivals, and everybody, Doyle Lawson, Third Time Out, Osborne Brothers, they all had old buses that were just barely making it.
Oh, yeah.
Up until a point, and I can't remember it had to be Oh Brother, where it turned
Ricky
the channel.
Skaggs came back.
They started making more money.
All that.
And we finally started seeing some actual nice-looking buses out there.
Yeah.
Everybody made it their gigs.
Yeah, I remember one time we were, I think it was Oklahoma or somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but it was fairly flat. And Donnie, he was our fiddle player. He was driving the bus, and he hollers at me. He says, "Panky, come up here." And I was like, "What?" He said, "Tell me, are we going uphill? Because I've got this thing floored, and I feel like we're getting slower and slower." Like, I believe it might be uphill, but it's going to be real gradual. And eventually, it did level out, and we could go. But it was, I don't know. We might make it. We might make it to the gig or not. I don't know.
Yeah.
There was a few of those.
At some point, you ended up owning a music store, right?
I did. And that grew out of me teaching. So I was teaching.
Same.
I had students. I had about between 40 and 50 students. And next thing you know, somebody needs a pack of strings, or they need this, or they need that. And it's like, well, I should be able to do that. So I remember I called Janet Davis. I said, "Janet, can you sell me just some stuff?" And so she sold me a couple boxes of strings and things like that and cut me a really good deal. And it's like, okay. And I was like, all right, I got to find another place to get stuff from. And so one of the very first, I started dealing with Midco, which was a jobber out of Atlanta. I dealt with them, and the first instrument people that I dealt with was Saga. And so I started carrying, just the Kentucky and Gold Star and Blue Ridge stuff that Saga sells. And next thing I know, I have built a music store around my lessons, which I did that for about 7 years. And it was one of those situations where the store was fine, but my wife at the time had got pregnant, and she wanted to stay home with the baby, and I wanted her to be able to do that. And I started doing the accounting and doing the books. And it's like, yeah, we can't do this and me have a music store. I don't make near enough money. I mean, as the store was profitable, but you can only siphon so much off of that and still be able to operate. And so I shut down the store in the end of 1999 and went back into banking, which was,
is a little more profitable. In case anybody does not know, music retail.
Tell me more about how I could get into this banking.
Please chart this out for us. Give us a bit of a roadmap.
Yeah, that was an accident too. Well, I went. Well, another musician got me into banking back before I started my music store, and I had worked in sales finance a little bit, and that as well as collections and doing all the not so fun stuff. But I learned a little about it, and then once we decided that Tina could stay home, it was okay for me to start pursuing other job, and so I almost immediately got a job offer at a local bank, and it's like, yeah, I'll do that. And while the money was definitely better, the thing that the money was consistent. I knew what I was going to make every month, as opposed to the music store, which, having a music store, you know that there are times that you make less than zero. So
Jeremy got a lot into collections, or you were on the other side of collections. I always get those mixed up. I'm sorry.
I can give him some
paid off
tips.
those
I
debts.
can give him some tips.
Quit answering the phone.
Yeah, quit. How do you dodge those phone calls? By the way, do you have any tricks for that?
Yeah, you change
Just
your.
in case one of our listeners is going through this right now.
One of the things that I did learn working collections is that, a person can just pretty much skip out on debt and never move. They just change your phone numbers, get a PO box, just stop interacting with stuff, and they just stay right in the same spot.
Did anybody ever pay their debt with a pig?
No, that only happened a couple of times. And in the bluegrass world, see, that was prophetic. How much pig have you eaten been paid in the bluegrass industry? How many?
You really think about it quite a bit.
Yeah.
There's so many potlucks and
barbecues.
And
We never played for
Yeah.
live pigs, but they were generally cooked.
They were live at some point.
We did one where they did the,
Yeah, just not for us.
what do they call it? The pit, where they dig it in the sand.
Oh,
and
yes.
do a full
Yeah.
pig roast.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
So technically, there's been a lot of
There you
pig consumed.
So while you went back into banking, were you still teaching?
Yes.
I mean, I know that teaching has been a big part of what you did musically.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been kind of what you've been into, right?
Yeah, that's been the main thing. Even when I was in high school, like other kids, they would want to be part of the string band, or they want to learn to play the banjo. And so I would help them. I would just show them what I knew, which wasn't much. But I was like, hey, if you do this and this, then you can play this. And so I did that. And then, but even when, so I've taught all along, even when I was in college. And it was just a nice little side hustle. But with the stress of a real job, especially in banking and finance, the teaching became a nice way to decompress, the way to de-stress, get away from the banking. It's like, like when I was teaching full time, and it's like, oh shoot, today I've got 10 students. It'd be like, oh Lord, 10 students. What can I do to get out of it? And then, and then, when you're banking and you look at your schedule and you think, hey, I've got 8 students this evening. All right. It was something that I started to look forward to. And I also at that point got really picky about who my students were. When I was trying to do it full time, just teach full time, I would take all comers. I didn't turn anybody.
Take all
down.
the money you can possibly get.
Oh, yeah.
And you got cash? I'll teach you.
Absolutely. You want to learn? You want to learn mountain dulcimer? Sure. Come on. It's like
At that point, Jim was also teaching spoons, a little bit of accordion,
a little bit of everything.
Pitch horn, tuba,
You just whatever it was, and so
hurdy-gurdy.
So once I had an actual set of income, I could say, I'm not going to teach mandolin anymore. I'm not going to teach this. These are the things I'm going to do. And so, and then it would be like, I'm not going to teach banjo to just anybody. Come, let's talk. Let's have a meeting. Let's see if I can fit you in the schedule. And so I got to be fairly picky about my students, which allowed me to have pretty good success with some of my students, because
awesome.
you're not spinning your wheels. And if you teach, there's always those students that the only time they have touched their instrument is when they come to their lesson. And while it's like, my dad would always say, just take the money. And it's like, yeah, but there is this mental thing. It's like, why don't you practice? You could be a great musician, but you haven't touched it in a week. And it's like, so
I've experienced that before.
But it's definitely nice to. So yeah, so I taught the whole time that I worked at the bank, and And even I left the bank in 2012. At that point I'd had enough. And it's like, this is no fun anymore. I don't want to do this ever again. And
I've seen all the money I can possibly stand.
What-
I am done here.
I'm done with this. I don't want to deal with this. At that point I was managing IT and security, all the IT related stuff for that bank, and as well as other operational tasks for the bank. And it's like, no, I am done. This is not fun anymore. And if I work as hard for me as I work for the bank, I should be all right. I mean, will I have the same income level? Heck no. But will I be able to survive? And, I'm doing the math. I'm saying, okay, I need this many students, this. I need this many gigs. It's like, yeah, I can do this. And so in 2012, I pulled the plug on the day job permanently, and I have just, struggled for a living, but I'm still here. So it must be working,
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So I noticed, well, not just noticed, I think everybody noticed, there are the two major styles. You are doing the three-finger style as well as frailing and old-time banjo.
Yes.
Which one came first for you, and what was the connection with both of those styles?
So I pretty much started learning both of them about the same time. My dad had, or mom, we had that red Pete Seeger book, which demonstrates up picking, frailing, two finger, three finger. He had a little bit of everything. So I just started experimenting with all of it. And Dad brought home the record. I don't know if I put my fingers on it. I've got the record stack, but it was the Earl Scruggs How to Play 5-String Banjo record. I didn't have the book. I just had the LP that went with it.
Was that the floppy record that was inside the book? Did you have it at that one?
No, it was actually it's an actual vinyl record. I mean, it's a 12-inch, 33 1/3 record, and it had different exercises from the book that I didn't have. And so I started working really hard on the three-finger Scruggs stuff at that point, and that's primarily what I played with the string band. But also shortly after that, we have a little theme park kind of. It's called Lake Winnepesaukah, and it's there near Chattanooga, North Georgia, and they would have country music shows. And Grandpa Jones came, so we obviously have to go see Grandpa Jones, and met him and talked to him, and he gave me a book of how he played clawhammer, frailing. And so I started out with that, trying to figure out, what he was doing a little more than what I'd learned in the Seeger book. And at that point, I just started I was just playing both. So I've at least, I guess technically probably three-finger came first, but I don't remember a time that I didn't also play clawhammer. I mean, I know the order that I learned them, but at this point, this many years later, old time frailing clawhammer stuff was early in the mix too. So I just kind of divided my time between them. But definitely when I was younger and with the string band, it was all three-finger stuff because we were playing bluegrass. There was no room for the clawhammer in any of that, at least in our minds.
So you're still educating now, and we're not, obviously we moved on to doing this by way of the internet. Has become even more. When did the YouTube channel kind of blow up for you?
So in 2011 is when I started. Greg Rich, I ran into Greg Rich. Well, I've known Greg since the early 90s, but I ran into him at Spigma, and this was 2010, well, early 2011. And he's like, we need you playing one of our banjos. I was like, well, what do you got? And so I wound up with the RK35, and Ashley Atz was the A&R guy that at Recording King still is at the time. And he sent me that, and it's like, hey, this is actually pretty good. So I did a couple of reviews, and then I decided, all right, we'll do a review every 6 months. So those took off pretty well. And then I had another video where it's like, oh, you want to play banjo? Everybody wants to play the banjo, but what style do you want to play? And so I demonstrated three finger and clawhammer and talked about the different styles if somebody was interested in learning. And so those two started to get some views. And then I had this guy, local, Keith, banjo player, aspiring banjo player, but could play. And he's like, hey, can you teach me eastbound and down? It's like, sure, come by the house sometime. I'll walk you through it. And he's like, no, I'm not coming by the house. Just make me a video and send it to me. And it's like, well, okay, you PayPal me $100, I'll make you a video. So he PayPal me some money. I was like, I guess I'm making a video. And so I made a video, and I told him, I said, if I'm making this video for you, I'm just going to post it. And that thing took off, and it started getting views. I'm thinking, well, this could work. And so every couple of weeks or so, he'd hit me up for another lesson. And it's like, all right, I'll do it. And I would stick it out on YouTube and send him the link. And so it kind of began with me doing custom one-off lessons for Keith. And it was stuff like City of New Orleans, Fire on the Mountain, the Marshall Tucker Fire on the Mountain, country roads, stuff, eastbound and down, stuff like that. And so there's no cohesiveness to the lessons. They're just here's how to play this song, here's how to play that song, or here's how I do it. And they assume that you already know how to play. And then I started getting folks hit me for, hey, you got to do a beginner series. And it's like, I don't want to do a beginner series. There's beginner series out there. If a person wants to learn to play the banjo, they can learn to play the banjo. It's not like, you've got Murphy Henry, you got all these different books. There's different ways that you can go about learning the banjo. And they're like, yeah, but it's not you. You need to do a video. I was like, shoot, okay. So I finally gave in, and that was 2016. And I gave in and I did that 10 lesson series of just beginner stuff. And up to that point, I had done several performance style videos and a few more of those lesson videos for Keith, but I'd never actually done what's this? Oh, it's a banjo. what? How do I play it? And so I did the 10 lesson series, and it kind of laid there for a little while. Was getting a little bit of traction, and in a couple of years, my subscriptions had grown to, I don't know, I may have had 20, 30,000 subscribers at that point on YouTube. But when the pandemic hit, everything exploded because everybody was home. And it's like, what are we going to do now? And people had banjos tucked behind the couch and in the closets and under the bed. And it's like, the channel exploded at that point. I went from maybe getting a couple of hundred new subscribers a month to a couple of thousand new subscribers every month during the whole time of the pandemic. There was like a 3-month period where I was getting like 3,000 subscribers per month new, so it's like that was nice. And
was that when you saw that happening, did you start churning out more content?
Absolutely.
Just from
absolutely.
Ride this wave.
Yeah, it's like, okay, here's the beginner series. Let's do a backup series. So I did a backup series. Let's do clawhammer banjo for the Bluegrass banjo player. So I did a series for that. And the goal has always been, since the beginner series, the goal has always been to make everything a little more cohesive, where it's not like super random. Like everything that I put out kind of builds on other stuff that I put out. And so I built the beginner series, and then it's like, what should I do next? Well, I need to do things that people can take the information from that beginner series and apply it in different ways. And so that was how that all kind of grew. And and I had a captive audience, and there wasn't a lot of other people. Obviously, there was no one else doing it at that point. And there were, it seems like during that time, there were a few other folks. As Eli Gilbert, for one, started doing lessons about that same time. And, we did a bunch of stuff there in the beginning just together. We would do these collaborations like this and just do a panel discussion where folks could come on our live stream and ask questions, and they'd have me and Eli, and Jody Hughes was another one. And all of that kind of started during the pandemic, as well as a lot of other people. It's been interesting to see the number of folks that started doing lessons and such, as it was determined to be a viable source of income.
Yeah, I was going to say some of it was out of necessity. Like some touring artists, all of a sudden, especially the sidemen that were in these bands, had no other source of income. They didn't have that local lesson program already there. So some of them turned to the internet and said, all right, I'm going to start doing some lesson series. And I know a lot of those personally that have continued to do that on the side, even as touring came back. But they've built some really good, like you said, followings with their relationships with students. And on their channels, they've just got a following now. So it really did birth a whole online lesson. There were people obviously out there before that, but it kind of gave that ground for all these other creators to get involved.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think it also gave this whole new run of new musicians. The pandemic was a space for people to finally take on something. And for me, one of the big surprises, and I'm sure you're going to recognize, you kind of basically said it with what you were seeing in subscribers, but Banjo came out of nowhere for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
I was totally blown away with people who I would have never thought were coming into this, calling us and calling the shop, even when we were shut down, and going, what I think I want to learn during this? The banjo. And I'm like, where did this come from? Because
it's my fault.
Yeah. Well, it's that too. But I do think that one of the things that I found most interesting because of this boom of banjo, and I talked to Dad about this too, is, he's a teacher and he teaches a lot. And he says, it's amazing to me right now that there is such a boom of new banjo players that aren't necessarily looking for what we all grew up on and what you grew up on. They're not listening to Earl Scruggs. They don't even know the J.D. Crowe stuff. They don't even know of this. There is a new style of banjo player and a new style of, listener that's coming up from all totally different spaces than what we all think of when we think of banjo.
I think of a student. I taught a class over at the folk school in Brasstown, North Carolina, and it was a continuing banjo class. So these students already played a little bit. They had either taken lessons or they had learned on their own or whatever, but they weren't absolute beginners, but mostly. And I have one lady in the class. She says, I just don't listen to bluegrass. Can I play Bruno Mars on this thing? And I was like, absolutely. You can play anything you want to on it. It's a musical instrument. It's not limited to a particular style. And so,
well, what do you think? What do you think kind of brought that on? Because Dad was saying this to me. Like I said, I talked to him just a couple months ago about this. Is we're seeing people wanting to play banjo in totally different styles than I've ever heard of. Like you said, Bruno Mars, but there's also people that are bringing in some of the pop stuff that has banjo, and also some of the old folk or other folk styles and stuff that I'm not as in tune with, that are bringing banjo into them in a whole different way. That's not traditional finger 3-finger style. They're using 3 fingers, but it's not with the same banjo rolls and patterns.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I remember like in 2010, 11, 12, that era of teaching, and I was having students come to me with like Avett Brothers, Mumford and Sons, those types of tunes. And I was getting calls from people saying, hey man, I really like the Avett Brothers. I think I want to learn to play the banjo. And they had no history of banjo in their life before that. Or I've even had students that took up banjo based on hearing it in a video game. It's,
Yeah.
whereas, because look, Oh Brother was 24 years ago, almost 25 years ago. So we've not had an Oh Brother or a Deliverance in a very long time. And so I think that we are getting folks coming to banjo from places where we're not expecting it, and definitely video games and music that I'm not listening to, and and it's not because it's bad. It's just music that I'm not even familiar with it in a lot of cases. I remember a student brought me that first Avett Brothers thing that I heard, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, I think we can do this. It's like, give me a minute. And so it was, I had no idea who it was, but it was banjo. It's like, yeah, we can do that. But, and as far as I know, that's the style stuff that this guy is still doing. I mean, it's more of it's more of a folky rock kind of thing, and he's still out there playing. And so, yeah,
Well, I think that's a cool thing that's going on with the banjo is I think it's being redefined.
for
Don't you
sure.
think? It's not just Earl and JD and Ralph and the stuff. Again, nothing wrong with that. But I'm amazed when Dad had that conversation with me of this. I'm not interested in that. Those guys,
Right.
these new students are coming in here and they have no interest.
They don't want to learn Earl.
It's very interesting to me because that's not what I expect. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And you guys, you came up in a bluegrass tradition, pretty much myself. And so it does, in some ways, seem foreign to see folks come into this genre or into the banjo world with completely different perspective on what they can do with the banjo. But I get that every time I do a live stream. And a lot of it is people just joking, but then there are the genuine questions. Can I play, can I play this song on the banjo? And it's like, well, sure you can. And it's like, here, let's, if it's one I know, I'll just sit and noodle through it just to show. Yeah, you can totally do that. But it's, yeah, but I agree. It's interesting to see folks coming to banjo from a different angle. And I see it like, I work with Recording King, and if I go out to their artist page, it's like there's banjo artists playing for Recording King that's really not playing bluegrass. It's different stuff, and folks are into that.
I think a lot of it could be, kind of where we started this conversation with you and what you've been doing with TikTok and YouTube. But, your origin story is very similar to our origin story, where we stumbled across some other bluegrass musicians. We heard some bluegrass recordings, got some jam session, went to festivals, did that. But now with the spread of TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, with the Avett Brothers, people are coming to the banjo from directions that had no involvement at all with bluegrass festivals and jam sessions. It's just something they stumbled across when they're flicking through TikTok, and all of a sudden Jim Panky's on his bed with a banjo. That's one other new avenue that brings them to the banjo. Or if they're on Spotify and says, you listen to this, you might also like this, and then it's an Avett Brothers tune.
Right. Yeah. And that, when I was still taking, I've got one private lesson right now. I've got one guy I've had since 2019. And because when the pandemic hit, all of my private students quit. For the most part, they're like, "Oh, we're going to take some time off," and and I'm like, "Good, take some time off, good." And but I kept Larry through this whole thing. But it's the online. I don't even know where I was going, but the online thing has definitely changed the way people discover music for sure. I mean,
I think that's a cool aspect of what we're talking about here. The change of how people discover music. When I was a kid, the idea of folk music was the worst and most atrocious thing in a middle school or a high school. You don't talk about folk music. It was, a gross thing to have happen. Now, that was in that 80s and 90s, deal. That was
In Denver, Colorado.
Colorado too.
Sure.
You realize it wasn't in Georgia. But it was a weird thing. And now, my kids even are going into high school, and the stuff that they're listening to is extremely diverse. I mean, you've got some of, like you said, an Avett kind of thing, which is more of a folk / rock / Americana music. And then they're pulling up Taylor Swift to go along with it. It's all over the place for young people. And I think it's because they're able to digest anything now.
Well,
I mean, like you said,
Right.
your channel.
Right. And with the whole advent of jam bands that really did not exist. I mean, the only jam band that existed for me would have been Newgrass Revival. That's been the closest thing to a jam band when I was learning. But now, you've got, there's so many, Green Sky, and I mean, Billy Strings, and even the McCurries. And it's a different vibe or different atmosphere that definitely attracts a younger musician. And so folks get interested in it through that. I mean, I've had students come to me, and people, at workshops and classes that I've done, and it's like, hey, do you know this Split Lip Rayfield song? And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. But it's like, hang on, let's go listen to it, and maybe I can show you. But folks are finding music definitely differently than the way. I mean, I found music by flipping through the record rack at the Donville grocery. We had a little grocery store not far from here that had bluegrass records. I'd flip through it. I just buy something. That was how I discovered it. It cost me money to discover it.
You had to take a risk.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't.
I remember those days.
I feel like I could go along with a lot of this conversation and follow it, but I still am not going to accept the fact that banjo may be cool. It's just not. It's not acceptable.
It's not acceptable.
You guys can talk all you want. It shall never be mainstream.
It sounds like a T-shirt to
shall
me.
never be
Banjo is
mainstream.
cool.
No, it's not.
When playing banjo starts to get you girlfriends just because you play the banjo, that's when we know you made a big impression on the world.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to happen. Even as a banjo player, it's just like.
Before we wind up, I know you got other things to do, but we've kind of gone through this journey, and then it brings us to TikTok Live. What was it that made you decide, hey, let's just turn this camera on, leave it live? And I know initially, that's one good thing about TikTok is it does keep serving up new people. They may stay, they may bounce out. Unlike, YouTube, a lot of times you'll go live and you'll have 2 people watching initially. TikTok at least seems to feed some people your direction. But what made you kind of decide, I'm going to just set a camera there, play banjo, see who shows up, see if anybody's interested in interacting with me?
So I started my TikTok account, and I would just throw stuff out there. And I had no plans of really doing much with TikTok at all. Then I got sick. I wound up with a kidney cancer, lost a kidney, lost a gallbladder, all of that, all at the same time. And so for a period of time, I really couldn't play. I keep my instruments in cases. I don't really trust stands that much. And so instruments are in cases, and they're heavy to deal with. And so there was a period of time that I did not play anything at all for probably about 3 months. So I had this 3-month downtime. And it's like, I've got to be accountable. I've got to find a way to make myself accountable to playing every day. So I was scrolling TikTok one evening, and I saw a live stream, and then I was like, what do you got to do to live stream? And it's like, oh, you got to have 1,000 subscribers. It's like, well, I've got 1,000 subscribers. So I at that point, I was cleared by my doctor that, I could drag out the heavy banjo. And because, anytime you have surgery, they're like, you can't lift anything over 8 pounds. It's like, well, shoot, that limits my options, especially since everything's in cases. So I started live streaming on my first practices trying to get back into shape playing on a regular basis. And it was a way for me, one, have people to chat with, have, some attention, because who doesn't like attention? And I could just sit in my bed, nice big bolster. It's about like sitting in a chair. And so I can sit there and play. And so it was part of it was just me getting stuff back ship shape in my picking, which I don't know that it ever did, but it was a way for me to be accountable to a practice session. And that's why it's kind of remained that for me. It's like, well, I started doing this as a practice. It's never been a show. It's never been, hey, here's my set list for tonight's live stream. It's just been a free for all, which is kind of what my practice sessions have always been. And so it was just a way for me to be accountable to myself. And it's like, hey, if I do this live stream, some of my friends can come and watch. And then the next thing I know, the TikTok channel is just booming because of the live stream. And
Very cool.
it was totally accident. Didn't mean for it to happen. It just kind of did. It just kind of happened by itself. And so I've taken a week off from the live streams, but it's crazy now. I miss it because it kind of become part of the routine of how I wind down in the evening. So probably be back on that pretty soon.
Awesome. So, have you got any of your North Dakota people back since they shut down TikTok out there?
I don't know that I ever had any. I will say this: the number of people that come to my live stream from Kentucky is I don't know the exact stats on that. So it's either I get a lot of people that come to my live stream that are from Kentucky, or that anybody that's from Kentucky it has to tell you. It may, so they may be compelled in some way. It's
I think it is a requirement when they get on the platform. Something, a funny thing to go along with that. We were at Spigma 2 years ago and we had a booth set up there, and I would have never thought as many older bluegrass farm-looking, guys would come up and say, "Yeah, I've been watching TikTok," and they're talking to each other about how much they're on TikTok, and it definitely did not strike me as the demographic of TikTok. But it blew me away how many old guys would come up and say, "Man, I've been watching you guys on TikTok."
So what is okay? Y'all do YouTube too, right?
Yeah.
What's your what is your demographic swing?
Jason knows that probably better than anybody.
YouTube, it'd be males 50 and above.
Same.
Roughly. I don't really look at the TikTok demos.
It's the same.
Apparently, it's 70 above.
Yeah, yeah. My YouTube is the same. It's 50 and over, men 50 and over. And funny story. So I'm doing so. Like whenever I would get a subscriber on YouTube that shared the fact that they have subscribed to me. I had this one lady, she had subscribed to me. She had a huge following. And, cause it'll tell you, hey, so-and-so's got 50,000 subscribers. And it's like, that's a potential collaboration, maybe, let's grow the channel. So I scroll over to her channel and we can't do a collaboration. Her channel is more adult oriented, and
there's the subscriber base.
But she's learning.
She's
learning. So she's learning banjo. Okay, and so I've shot her a message, and it's like she says, "Yeah, I'm learning banjo. I subscribed to your channel, and I goofed and subscribed with this channel instead of my other." Anonymous channel, and so in the conversation, it's like I would be curious to know what your demographic is, because at that time we both had like similar views, similar subscribers, same demographic. It's men 50 and over.
There you go.
Her live streams get the same.
She's incorporating banjo. She's going to double her.
Yeah, you're about to totally lose all your subscribers.
I know.
Well, unless you start taking your shirt off.
Well, we can do that. It could be here.
Oh, no, we can't.
No,
we can't. No, we can't.
May not have the same effect.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, Jim, we do appreciate you taking time to meet with us. It's been fun to watch your channel. When I'm scrolling through there, I'll stop by and visit, and I'm going to try to do that more often. We're going to try to get Jason out of the
one day I'll work up the courage to
he's
have
like you in the
conversation.
background of that jam session.
That's
You got to
right.
call him up forward and
Just
say,
come on, y'all just come on.
But we appreciate it so much. And if you guys haven't, listeners out there haven't checked him out, go to Jim Panky's YouTube channel and also TikTok. It's just a lot of fun. And if you want to learn banjo, there's a lot of great resources there as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to not be in the day and age we live in. There's no reason to not be able to play banjo. I mean, it's
Except for the fact that you shouldn't play banjo. Those are that's another reason.
If
though.
you want to, the resources are there.
and if you're not cool anyway, you know.
If you would like free pigs,
It won't hurt to learn
I
banjo,
mean,
right?
and all the barbecue you can eat, you know.
Well, we thank you so much, Jim,
Yeah,
and
it was a blast.
hope to see you soon.
All right, well, yeah, you will be seeing me soon.
that's right. We're
All
gonna be
right.
out here, so
All right, we'll see y'all.
see you. Take care.
All right.
Jeremy, quick, give me a situation where somebody needs an instrument fast.
There is a band that's performing. You want to get backstage. You don't know how to get backstage, but you're a huge fan. So you grab a guitar, you walk backstage and say, hey, I got to get this to the lead singer. He needs it now.
All right, John, give me a situation quickly where they can get that guitar.
Well, here's the deal. You guys can go to theacousticshop.com and get on there. You can search for guitars. You can check by brand. You can check by style. All those different things. Order it. It will be shipped that day, if not the very next day.
Now give me a situation where they need a banjo.
There's no need for banjo. Everybody knows nobody needs a
But if you did need a banjo, you go to theacousticshop.com. Like John said, check us out, and thanks for supporting the podcast.
I can't think of a reason.
Nobody has a reason
Sorry,
for a banjo.
Dad.
Well, guys, that was a lot of fun. Jim Panky.
I'd like to point out the fact that John burped
Belched
into the
into the
microphone
microphone
right
right as I was-
before. Wasn't sure if this was is that our go cue?
I'd say
Is that our go cue?
we're raw.
It's the cut marker.
Clapper. Yeah. Could you sync the cameras to John's burp? Idiot.
Professional.
I've
Anyway.
never been accused of being professional.
I hope Jim doesn't actually watch this. Or I hope
No.
any of our guests don't watch these so they don't.
No,
like,
they don't.
Avoid
They don't.
It. Good.
This never goes anywhere
You
anyway.
know when this is over with, they're like burning our phone number.
I've trained our crew to burn all of this as soon as it's done. So it's never edited.
This doesn't go online.
No, absolutely not. Jim, what a great guy, though. That
was
was
super
that was
nice.
great talking.
And I didn't know some of the history of like how he really got into the banjo in general. I didn't know he was a banker.
No, who does?
Well, now everybody does.
Nobody tells anybody that they're bankers. You know why.
My middle son wants to be an investment banker because he asked me what career makes the most money. I said you probably want to be an investment banker.
My kid wants to be a football player, and
some
yours wants to be an
derivatives and
investment
whatnot.
banker.
Mine wants to figure out how to quit picking his nose.
Well, my youngest one goes up to me yesterday and says,
Wants to be a dog.
Dad, do you have to go to college to be a monster truck driver?
yes.
I don't know if you do. I hope you go to college.
I'm surprised he
says,
didn't.
How much is college? I said, I don't know. It could be like a couple $100,000 depending on where you're going for. He says, well, how much do you think for a monster truck driver? I said, well, it might be more affordable. Let's not give up our college career yet.
I'm surprised he didn't pick some random zoo animal and say that's what I want to be when I grow up.
He's all about driving. He wants to drive.
have
Be
to
a
grave
sea
digger.
otter.
Do you have to go to college in order to be a elephant?
He's a smart kid. He just wants to be a monster truck driver. Lay off it.
He's not.
Anyway.
I never said he wasn't smart. He's just
We've
weird.
drifted again. Jim Pankey,
Odd.
fun guest. I can't wait till the next episode, guys. I actually have fun with these.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy anything else I do with you guys, but the podcasts are fun.
All right, let me absorb that.
Confession time.
I'll take that in, and I'll decide later whether or not I hate you.
Can we do like the confessional booths like on Big Brother? And I just go in
Shut
there?
up, Jeremy.
I hate those guys. Podcast is fun, but I hate those guys.
Shut up,
I'm
Jeremy.
gonna vote them both off.
Oh my God, we're gonna lose everybody
Jeremy, I
because
wish-
Jason's so mean.
No, I'm not mean.
You are so.
I'm just saying what everybody
shut
out
up to
there.
people is
I'm
considered
just saying
rude.
what everybody out there is thinking. Shut up, Jeremy.
I hope your kids
God.
listen to this and they start saying that to their dad. See what your reaction
I've
is.
told them to tell it to you when they want you to. You're only allowed to use these words when they're appropriate and when Jeremy's in the room. Anyway, yes, let's get the podcast going again so we can have these cathartic conversations with each other.
You used a word that you don't even know what it means.
John, we're not all idiots like you.
Shut up.
Shut
Well,
up.
that is fun. See? All right, let's get out of here. The folks
All
aren't
right,
gonna like it.
we'll see you guys on the next
Hurtful.
one. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channels, and
share with
especially
anyone else that you
everywhere
hate.
you're listening to this
Yeah.
on your podcast
Give it a review.
app. Give it a review, because otherwise nobody's ever going to hear it. You'll be the only one. You right now are probably the only
selfish.
one listening, and I want more than you.
being
I mean, you're
selfish.
great,
Share this with
but
others.
please bring more friends. Please, for the love of God.
This
And
is going to justify this expense.
just remember, shut up, Jeremy.
Until next time. Shut up, Jason.
Take me away.
The Acoustic Shop Knows People. Handmade by Trent Pruitt, Hinkley Hinkleston, and Jason Chapman for the Acoustic Shop.
Theme song written and performed by Ofer Koren.
And please remember to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.